Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're well and that you've had a good week. I noticed that everybody has introduced themselves, although not everyone has responded to the Gawande book yet, or the other question on the discussion board. But I presume you will soon. And really, remember that you need to try to keep on top of things. That's the best way to succeed in an online course. And I know it's easy to let it slip by. So if you could make a day or a time each week where you check back in, that will be helpful. The Gawande book, and if you haven't had time to finish it yet, please at least do watch the Frontline video, because that will give you things that you would not be able to get from the book, and it'll be a good summary so that you will be able to catch up with with how we've organized the course. So one of the things I think it would be good to just say at the outset is that even though I might email you the unit each week, it's better to begin with watching the video, this introductory video, because it kind of sets the stage for what you're going to be reading and where we are at the course at this very moment. So do that if it's possible, if you have all the internet access that you need at that moment. And it kind of sets the scene for what we're going to be doing. Gawande, in his book, he contrasts two deaths. So you've got his grandfather's death in India, and then you have his wife's grandmother's death in the United States. And it kind of points out that there are cultural differences, great cultural differences, in how death is treated in different cultures. Now we have the beauty of quite a few cultures here. We've got Vietnam, we've got Indonesia, we've got Ghana in West Africa, and I think and then we have the United States, but we've got the United States from different eras. So some of us are from another generation, shall we say, in the United States. And so we bring a different context to this. Actually, it is our own experiences that shape how we approach sickness and death. And so your stories will be an important part to this course. So my era, I'm a post-World War II baby boomer. I was born in 1946, and World War II had just ended. But lots of the vaccines that your generation, well, we're not all in the same generation, but the younger people have received, have meant that they didn't have as many of the contagious diseases that I had, or that my friends had during the course of their lives. So death was much more constant when I was young. And it wasn't old people who died only, it was children, it was their parents who died. So there was no way in which I could escape at any stage of my life that death is for other people. Death was always something that was experienced by people I knew, even in elementary school, high school, college. So it was constant. And how we responded to death was also culturally. So my father took me to all of the family wakes. My father was Irish, and he came from a large family in New York. And this is how I got to meet second cousins and have a sense of how extended the family was. And so I really relate to my paternal relations. My mother was from South Dakota, and we really didn't know or meet her family until much later in our lives. So my father had been in World War II, and actually my mother had as well. My mother was in Europe, my father was in the South Pacific. So they certainly lived more closely with death. But they raised me in a way that death was part of life. And so I saw that as I got older, everybody didn't have that experience. And in the late 60s, as the hospice movement began to get started in the United States, as a result of Cecily Saunders' work in England, I saw that I would like to engage in that ministry just because I wasn't afraid of death. And I thought that in some ways, that was a gift I could share with others. And so for about 4 years, I was a hospice volunteer at Mercy Hospital in Rockville Center. So your experiences also are going to shape your approach to sickness and death and dying. In this course, 1 year, Mary Fagan was a Sister of Mercy from Ireland, and in her time in Ireland, the family prepared the body once the person died. The family did all that preparing of the body, and the wake took place in the house. So that's something that was unique to her and to her experiences. And I've heard of more recent experiences of that in Ireland as well. Now, my undergraduate students, when I cover this unit in the basic liturgy class, churches, sacraments, the worshiping church and sacraments, something like that, they're often frightened because they haven't known death. They didn't have personal experiences. Some had friends die in high school, but others, their grandparents are still living, their parents are still living, everybody's very, very close to, and they know that it's going to be a really important death, and they're afraid of that. So I offer you an opportunity on the discussion board to reflect on your experiences and how they have shaped your understanding of death and your approach to it. This week we're going to read the Susan Wood essay in Recovering the Riches of Anointing. I keep abbreviating it RRA, so this is what I mean. And besides reading her essay, also read the foreword and the introduction. That's always great to do in a book because you understand where the editor, the author, is coming from. It's not superfluous, it's really essential to the reading of the book. So make sure you do that. And there's a question about that. Actually, there are two questions on the discussion board related to that reading. One of the things the editors say is that sickness itself is an impatient questioner. And so I put a question on the question board. What do you think that means? And do you agree with it or disagree with it? There are famous quotations related to sickness. Craig, I guess, quoted Dylan Thomas in his responses. But one of my favorites, actually, is by Flannery O'Connor, who says that sickness before death is a great mercy. And I think you might understand, after reading the Gwande book, the cases, or even seeing the video, in cases where that is really true, that people say that the last year of their life, or the last month of their life, was the best. And I've shared that with people I knew who were dying and saw that really their lives had been enriched immeasurably by feeling their mortality and saying important things that needed to be said. Now, we don't all have that luxury, which is why it's important to live with a stronger sense of we're all living on borrowed time. It's always important to let those we love know that we love them, and to leave things, resolve things when it's important. We also saw that with John McCain. They only told us that day before he died that they discontinued treatment, but they'd obviously done it considerable time before that. But he had those, famous people came to see him. His family stayed around him. It was a really public dying that wasn't fearsome. So as usual, the fourth question on the discussion board, it relates to any questions that you have. So the reflection paper is due next Monday, but make sure that you don't write it until you've finished all the reading that you need to do, because it's supposed to be you're responding to everything that you've read. So, make sure you finish the reading before you write the reflection paper, even if you need to request an extension on it. And there will be a place on the discussion board for you also to post a short précis of your paper, and where others can respond to it. Okay? Have a good week. Any questions, problems, email me, call, text. Nice to be with you. Bye.